Okay, if money genuinely wasn't a problem, I think I would become kind of an insane garden person. Not in like the suburban, raised bed, very clean cut lines kind of way, but in like a full estate garden situation kind of way. Winding pathways, old stone staircases, citrus trees, mosaic tiles, a greenhouse hidden somewhere deeper in the property. Like, these are the kinds of things I've thought about to an unreasonable degree. And recently, I realized that I'm the kind of person that fantasizes a lot about being rich and what I would do with all of that money. And quite frankly, it's probably not all about those flashy things. It's not necessarily always a sports car or giant closets or yachts or whatever. Although sometimes it definitely is those things, and I hope to talk about those things in the future on this podcast. But it's always about spaces, routines, really imagining like the texture of what those things would feel like. And those are the moments that I want to dwell in the most. Beautiful environments that just feel deeply rich to live in, and imagining these scenarios and these little cinema-like moments in this ideal, not resource-capped version of myself. So I wanted to start this little series where I let myself fully indulge in those fantasies for a little bit, maybe join me for 30 to 40 minutes. Not in a how do I get here way, and not in a what kind of habits do I need to do to get to this future version of myself, because frankly, there's enough of that on the internet. If you want a podcast or some girl talking about what you need to do to become your dream life, honestly, I could probably speak to that, but that is not what this is. So, welcome to Rich in Theory, where we think about if money and resources genuinely weren't a problem, what kind of lives would we actually want to build? And somewhere hidden inside all of that, probably figure out what we are actually craving underneath. So today, we are going to be building my dream garden. And in my head, this property exists somewhere in coastal Southern California, which obviously very expensive to all my SoCal baddies out there. How does it feel to live my dream? Kind of a Mediterranean estate that meets an overgrown botanical garden, warm plaster walls, terracotta roofs, olive trees, ocean air, jasmine at night, stone pathways heated from the sun all day. So, let's get started at the front gate. I think the entrance to this garden is through this tall plaster-like archway with an old wrought iron gate that's set into it. The walls are like a warm cream stucco. It's slightly textured. When I first was imagining this garden, this is so embarrassing and off topic, but my boyfriend does a lot of Minecraft builds, and I was thinking about sandstone, which I don't think I would actually want sandstone, but that's like the color, if it helps you to imagine. There's ivy, and I'd never know how to say this word. I wrote it down. Bougainvillea. They're the flowers that frequently drape over structures like this, and it's growing over the top and spilling down the sides like they've been there forever. And next to the gate, there's this handmade mosaic tile plaque with the house number on it. Whatever it is, I imagine it's 8. 58's my favorite number, so maybe it's like 58, 88, 5888. I made that up, but that's on there with deep blues and muted greens, maybe some touches of orange in there as well. The whole thing is very like warm terracotta colors and very Art Deco inspired patterns. Little sunbursts and vines and koi that are worked into the tile. And once the gate opens, the path curves slightly instead of leading straight forward. I think nothing about this garden is going to be very straightforward. So you don't see the whole property immediately. It's shaded, and there's going to be a little bit of discovery as we walk through this garden together. When you walk through, you feel gravel crunching under your feet, terracotta pots with rosemary and lavender to the left and to the right of you. These are both practical, of course. I imagine a lot of cooking happens in and around this garden, but also really set the mood and the tone, especially with the aroma of the rosemary. There's citrus saplings near the entrance, think like little lemon trees. They're not quite fully grown yet, but they are producing fruit. Brass lantern sconces that are slightly textured. I'm forgetting the name, where they ding little spots into metal. I imagine that's on some of the textures in these sconces. There are a number of repaired ceramic pots, and maybe they're repaired in the way where they let the cracks be lined with gold. There's a fountain audible in the distance. You can't quite see it yet, but you know the direction that it's in, and you can hear it, just the trickling. And at night, the jasmine smell is full force, and you kind of can feel the ocean air. I don't imagine we're right next to the ocean, but we're close enough to where when day turns to night, you can in the background just barely hear crashing of waves, and the breeze moving through the vines around you on the wall. In this curved pathway, it eventually opens into the central lawn, which is kind of the heart of this entire garden that I imagined. It's this large open rectangle of grass surrounded by pathways and olive trees and flower beds. And I think it exists mostly as kind of a breathing room, right? We're going to be walking through this space, and there's going to be a number of little secrets and passages. And I told myself that if I was ever rich, I would have all of my spaces be the kind where if a child was in my house, not like super young, but like, you know, when you're young and the world still feels like much larger than it actually is. And I knew like my grandparents and other people had houses like this growing up. And when you went, you always found little secrets and little nooks and sections that just felt magical. That's what this garden's really trying to capture. Everything else in the garden is like layered and textured. So having this central lawn open space makes the entire property feel a lot calmer. There's soft fescue grass. And I imagine, because when I originally thought up this garden, there was no lawn space. I'm an agriculture major and an economics major. So for me, big lawns, I'm like, we don't need that. That's a drain on resources. Sorry if I'm a lawn hater, but the reason I kept it in was because I imagine there's probably some dogs running around on this property. I grew up with a yellow lab, so maybe a yellow Labrador retriever. Some of my dream dogs, King Charles Spaniel? I forget the little white and orange fluffy ones, corgis. I love Australian Shepherds, but frankly, I think they're too high energy for me, even in this dream, unrealistic scenario. Golden Retriever, obviously, of course. There's olive trees with twisted trunks also in this area. They dot across the lawn. Wildflowers that soften the edges, and low stone retaining walls with stone staircases that branch outward. Somewhere maybe between two of the olive trees, there's a hammock, or maybe between an olive tree and a stone column that has something etched into it. Cream canvas with a faded navy stripe and a linen throw blanket, just very classic, almost like a sailor feel. I love like the linens, the navy blues, those textures, especially in an outdoor space. We're not going to talk about like a pool or anything today. I think that's its own separate video, but I imagine in the pool area, there are similar textures and colors, and so that ties it together. There's a wrought iron easel also left outside, and maybe it's been a little sun damaged because someone forgot to bring it inside. It's a half-finished orchard painting currently on there, done with oil paint. Someone's been watching their Bob Ross videos, and oil paint has this strong smell to it. And even with all of the scents of the garden, once you get close to it, you smell the mix of iron and oil, and it's this touch of industrialness in the garden that kind of pulls you out for a second, but it still feels like artistic and raw in a way that doesn't totally clash with the outside surroundings. There's subtle Art Deco tile and edging around a fountain that sits somewhere in this lawned area. And then maybe off to one side of the lawn, the pathways start to narrow a little, and they transition into a productive garden space. And I think this area is one of my favorite parts because obviously it's still beautiful, right? Like you can't really take that away from a garden. It's always going to be like a beautiful natural space. And it doesn't feel utilitarian or industrial. The vegetables and herbs and flowers all kind of grow into each other in a really layered way. So it still retains its beauty, but at the end of the day, it's a functioning garden, and there is method to the madness. There's raised cedar beds darkened from watering, and gravel paths, and maybe some painted stone paths as well, or mosaic stone paths, the little circles with mosaic patterns on them between the pathways. So you have this main gravel path, but then all of these other little sections that allow you to hop between the garden beds. There's drip irrigation hidden under mulch. Again, not to beat the dead horse, but you're listening to an ag major's take on an estate garden, so you already know it's going to be water efficient. Heirloom tomatoes, lemon cucumbers, artichokes, strawberries. Part of the reason I love SoCal, but a big reason I wanted to start with the garden for the first episode and establish this location, this scene, the climate, the temperature, was because so many of these plants, and you have so many options in Southern California, is basically what I'm trying to get at. There's ocean nearby, mountains nearby. The climate is so befitting of growing so many kinds of things, and you're near cities and you're near the country, and it's just got everything. So yeah, that's my sidebar. But we have all these plants I previously mentioned, the strawberry spilling over the edges, giant basil plants just left to grow into the bushels, not your Trader Joe's potted plant. Dahlias that are mixed into crops, black iron deco trellises, tomatoes climbing up them. Pollinator flowers are everywhere, which, hint, hint, will become important. Ceramic plant markers that were fired and have little paintings of what each of the plants are. I've done painting, pottery a couple of times. I've never actually thrown before. It's on my bucket list, but I think it's so relaxing and I love the look of them. One reads, "Do not trust the mint," because you can never trust the mint. All my gardeners know. A bowl of water with stones for bees. There's dragonflies nearby, woven harvest baskets, and warm hose water in the late afternoon because the hose has just been sitting out all day. And you know how when it's been out in the sun, and you spray like the first little bit of the hose water and it's just hot because it's been out there. And tucked directly into the garden, not separated from it, is an outdoor dining courtyard. This isn't like a modern outdoor kitchen set up with TVs everywhere. It feels like it's old, like it evolved slowly over time around the garden. There's pergola covered in jasmine and grapevines, a long reclaimed wood dining table with kind of a picnic-like feel. And aside from the picnic benches, there's mismatched wood dining chairs that can be pulled up. Some of them have been painted on the legs with flowers and vine patterns. There's a cream plaster pizza oven with blue mosaic tile around the opening of it. The pizza oven, as we walk up to it, still feels warm. There's the smell of roasted peach and burrata flatbreads with just, you already know, the melted cheese smell. You see olive oil stains on the prep counter, which is just a slab of stone with some cutting boards strewn about. There's wax drippings from candles, string lights overhead, an outdoor fireplace, citrus trees and giant pots, herbs growing between flagstones, because frankly, I don't want to walk all the way back to go get my basil when you can just have another plant right here, all connected to the same drip irrigation system. There's a framed plain, or multiple framed plein air paintings hanging under covered walls, an ocean breeze still moving through these curtains that are kind of half attached to the cover of this dining area. I think I really went back and forth on including a dining area in the garden. Part of me was like, does that fit better with the pool, tennis court, pickleball episode, that section area? And I think for the most part, yes. But when I kept thinking to the pizza oven, I could not let go of the idea of it being in the garden. It feels more at home there. If you disagree, let me know. And then we've gotten pretty far into the garden at this point, so just as a quick break and an aside, while you're walking through this garden with me, I hope I'm giving you some ideas, but please, while you're listening, think to yourself, like, oh no, I wouldn't have jasmine and grapevines in my dining area. I would have something else. I would have lavender bushes. I would have lilacs. Challenge the fantasy or just sink into it, whatever you want to do. And at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about what maybe your dream garden estate might look like. Because really, if we're not reflecting on this, it just kind of becomes mindless wishing, which isn't a bad thing. I think we all need that once in a while, and that's why we're here. But I think if you can tie it back into what you want and what you desire, that makes it even more beautiful. So let's keep going. Behind this productive garden and partially hidden by citrus trees and climbing vines, there is a greenhouse. And this section feels quieter than the rest of the property thus far. Like everything here slows down once you step inside. In the morning, the glass is foggy and the air is warm and humid. There's wooden shelving throughout and clay pots, some decorated, some plain, everywhere in the building. There's seedlings, orchids, monstera cuttings, small lemon trees in pots. And somewhere at some point, a radio was thrifted, and it just kind of constantly plays on the jazz station on a little wood shelf high up. There's a rolling library ladder because the greenhouse is taller than it is wide. Pressed flowers that are tucked into books. Whether or not we actually read those books, more just so for inspiration than for any actual learning. Most of them are old and some of them have been faded with time and from being in the sun. There's a thin geometric black metal framing to the greenhouse, as well as a small coffee table inside. This is where, in spring days, when it's not absolutely humid and smoldering in the morning, I come and do my morning coffee ritual. I think it would be tempting to take coffee in a lot of places in the garden. And frankly, not every day is a coffee day for me. I imagine it's probably only once or twice a week. And if this is truly the dream vision version of myself, I imagine I'm not even in this estate super all the time. It's not like I'm spending every day here. I'm probably traveling. I'm probably still working in some capacity. I might be out with friends, who knows? But on the days I do have coffee, this is where I like to sit and maybe listen to jazz and just quietly work on planting some seedlings and other little mundane to-dos. Right beside the greenhouse is a little garden shed that honestly is somewhere between a workspace and an art studio. There's a dark wood exterior with flower boxes under windows. It's more civilized than the rest of the garden. This is a place where you could probably go in and not find bugs. I'm not super bothered by bugs, but I would be lying if I said I didn't get a little squeamish when I saw certain bugs. Most are okay. Spiders. But we're not going to worry about that in the dream fantasy today. We're not going to think about that. These flower boxes, maybe they're filled with peonies or marigolds, which were my favorite flower growing up. I've since evolved and have become a hydrangea girl like my mom, but marigolds were my favorite for a long time, so I'd like to think I'd incorporate them. There are copper tools hanging inside, a drafting table that's used and been repurposed as a potting bench, paint splatters, soil stains. There's charcoal sketches pinned nearby on a corkboard, rolls of twine, drying herbs that are hanging from the ceiling that just makes it smell absolutely divine in here. When you breathe in, you can feel the scent of herbs hit the back of your nose. Small, squeaky, rotating fan because it does get hot in here. Clay pots stacked outside, and a sea glass collection in jars from trips by the beach. They glint perfectly on the windowsills and reflect and kind of create that same look that you get from those rainbow creators, the little glass balls that people hang up in their windowsills. Past the greenhouse, the garden opens up again into the orchard. And this part feels softer and less structured than the productive garden. The pathways become wider, the grass gets taller, everything's a little bit more overgrown, but at the same time feels more spacious. There's lots of trees in the orchard. Some personal picks, lemon trees, blood oranges, peaches, figs, because we're fancy, pomegranates, olive trees, wild thyme that grows underneath all of them, I'd like to think there's avocado. I'm big with avocado on my pizza. Apples. Anything you can imagine and that can grow in this area, we've got it. And they're all kind of speckled about. There's woven baskets in a stack in like a shaded covered area. So you can go pick whatever produce you need for that afternoon or that morning. You can see bees buzzing around everywhere. There are wooden ladders, one or two of them, hanging against the trees so you can get that good produce at the top. There is nothing left by the end of the season. Everything's either been used or gifted away, or I've let my friends come in and have their pick of the land. There's sea glass wind chimes speckled about, and you can hear the soft buzzing of the bees with the same clinking and like soft chatter of the wind chimes. Long grass moves in the wind, and there is this warm, dusty smell in the late afternoon, partially from maybe the baskets or the wood ladders. You can't quite put your finger on it, and there's so many things it could be from, but frankly, I don't really care, and if you're along on this journey with me, I imagine you don't much as well. Off to the edge of the orchard is the chicken area, which somehow feels more charming than it does practical. I went back and forth on animals, and like the scale. Part of me was like, do you really want animals at all, Grace? But I figure, and that's partially because if this really is my dream life scenario, I'm probably not going to be there all the time. But if this is my dream life scenario on limited resources, there are people I can hire to help me tend to this massive garden, including the chickens. So yes, we decided on chickens. No horses. I like the idea of horses, but I think if I wanted to go ride a horse, it would not be on my property. You know, I think I would go somewhere because I don't think I would spend enough time or have that desire to be with a horse. And because they are like the creatures that they are and the bonds they make, I would feel bad about it. So no horse, but chickens, yes. The coop is painted a cream color with a muted green trim. This feels very modern barn house of me, but I think when I imagine it, a lot of the paint has already flecked off and it's been replaced with little doodles and drawings, which gives it more of a rustic charm. There's flower boxes around, marigolds, soft clucking of the chickens in the background, and you hear beehives nearby. Lavender is planted around the hives, and small painted signs that say, fresh eggs if the girls are feeling generous. Chickens wandering through the orchard occasionally. We try not to limit them, and frankly, they make more eggs than I know what to do with, especially when I'm having an egg ick moment. But there's always someone baking. And also I like eggs on my pizza. I think they call that a Bismarck pizza. Not bad if you haven't tried it. And then the bees, right? So they are in bee boxes that have been painted. Frankly, I'm a little scared of bees, and I'm also allergic. Not in a close your throat way, but in a way where like I will be swollen for 5 days after a bee sting, and not like in a little circle way. Like a bee stung my hand this last year, and it looked like my hand looked like those hospital glove balloons when you blow them up in like cartoons. That's what my hand looked like. So I imagine, I know bees are nice. That bee was just an asshole, but the bees are around. And I love honey. I love honey on pizza, which is a big reason I wanted it. But I also imagine we use the beeswax and other things for various goods. And further down the property, the pathway starts descending through these old stone staircases into the wild garden section. And I think this is probably the dreamiest part of the entire property. With these narrow pathways, overgrown ivy, tall grasses, there's cosmos and foxglove, Queen Anne's lace, poppies, and mosaic stair risers that depict bees, koi fish, various other mosaic inspirations, the moon phases, vines, perhaps a kraken somewhere for my namesake. There's one cracked tile intentionally left imperfect, maybe repaired with that same gold that we had talked about. There's a small koi pond with lily pads, dragonflies, and a tucked away hidden iron bench. Cooler, shaded air, and just water sounds everywhere. This area is peppered with hidden fountains and maybe a small creek that leads into this koi pond. I think this section, for me, really strongly connects back to that feeling of wanting to have little secrets in my garden. And at the very back of the garden is this shaded gazebo space that feels almost separated from the rest of the property. Like the entire garden is leading you there. There are linen curtains moving in the breeze hanging from the tops of this gazebo, and a circular mosaic table with deep blue and gold deco starburst patterns. There's cushioned seating, which is mix and match, like most things in the garden. Water-warped books stacked nearby that have notes written in the margins from people long before me. It's a collection, but one that has already seen years of wear and tear, so it's not being kept preciously, but being allowed to be in nature and where a lot of those books had probably been written. There's an old film camera left on the table. Probably has like 5 or 6 shots left at this point, and who the hell knows if it even works. There's vines overhead, and at this point, we've taken so long wandering in the garden that there's an evening golden light, and everything just melts into those purple and gold and orange California sunsets. And you're exhausted because we've spent all day wandering in this deep, luxurious outdoor space. And I think the interesting thing about all of this is none of the parts I'm most attracted to are the expensive parts, aside from the drip irrigation system. Obviously, I'm very attached. But even that, like, if you budget okay, you do well for yourself, you too could have a drip irrigation system. Like, yes, technically, the entire fantasy requires an absurd amount of money and land and time. But what I keep returning to is the feelings and the smells and the textures that are attached to it all. I felt like this was a good theme to start on because it sets the tone of care, slowness. Trust me, some of the episodes I have planned, we will wander a little bit away from this. We're going to talk about yachts, our dream cruise ship. We're going to talk about the private jets, all of these things. But the garden, this was the one that I felt like deserved the opening episode. It's about beauty integrated into daily life, hosting people, growing things, artistic living, connection to the environment, intentionality. And these kinds of fantasies help to reveal your values, and not in the traditional sense of values like honesty and like virtues, not virtues, but truly what you value. If money wasn't an object, what would you prioritize? If anything, if you could have it all, what would you have? So for me, currently, obviously, I don't live in a space like that. I live in an apartment and I don't have a yard or anything, but I do have a little deck and I do have a little deck garden. I have some herbs and pots. I continue to host dinners, even though I don't have an awesome ceramic pizza oven with peaches and honey, all fresh. But that doesn't stop me. I just go to the store and I buy honey and we make pizza in the oven, like the plebeians we are. I try to make my space feel as intentional as possible and find beauty in those small rituals. So, I'd actually really love to know, and you don't have to comment or anything. You can if you want, obviously. I do really want to know. But what's everyone else's version of this? Because I feel like people's dream spaces say a lot about them. But yes, I'd really like to know what everyone else's version of this looks like, because I feel like people's dream spaces say a lot about them and what they value. And it's okay if yours is totally different from mine. You could want that manicured lawn look. Frankly, it's probably something I wanted before maybe 3 or 4 years ago for a long time. But here are some questions to get you thinking. You can journal these, you can just think about them, you can tell a friend, you can tell me. DMs are always open. Would your garden estate space be manicured or wild? Would it be small or large? Would you have a greenhouse, a flower garden, an orchard? If you had to pick one, what would you prioritize? And you don't have to answer that too. This is all about if you could have everything. And what would be in it? What's your weirdly specific luxury detail? I think mine's the irrigation system. Chickens? No chickens? And then finally, what could you bring into your life right now? And I think I'm realizing that these episodes are, yes, about luxury, but really more about what we find beautiful. And beauty is a wonderful thing. Anyway, that's my absurdly detailed dream garden. Next time, maybe we'll design the actual house attached to it, because apparently I've accidentally started building an entire imaginary estate, piece by piece. If you're interested in seeing some of the visuals that went into the inspiration for this episode, I will have the Pinterest board linked in the description. You can go check it out. And thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay luxurious. Bye.